I still remember the moment I saw him and didn't. It sounds strange, I know. But there he was, standing across the crowded street, smiling at someone else, someone who wasn't me. My heart stopped. My thoughts froze. I wanted to scream, to run, to tell him everything I'd ever felt. But I didn't. Because I didn't matter. Not yet, and that was the moment my life quietly began to change. My name is Lina Harper. I'm 23, a college graduate trying to find her place in a city that never sleeps. Some people call me shy, others call me cautious. I call myself observant. I notice things others don't. Little smiles, the way someone fidgets when nervous, the soft tones in a voice that hint at emotions unsaid. And I had been noticing him for almost 2 years. Ethan Cole. The first time I saw him, I didn't even know his name. He was tall, with messy dark hair that somehow looked perfect even when it was chaotic. His eyes, they were the kind that made it impossible to forget him, even if you tried. He didn't speak much to anyone, but when he did, it was like the world paused for a moment, just to hear his voice, and somehow, without knowing why, I started to watch him from afar. I'd catch glimpses in the library, in the cafeteria, sometimes even when we passed each other on the street. And every time, my heart ached a little, because I knew he didn't notice me the way I noticed him. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when everything began. I had just finished a late shift at the CAF where I worked part-time. The city smelled like wet asphalt and blooming coffee shops. I pulled my coat tighter, wishing the rain would just vanish, and then I saw him, Ethan, across the street, talking to another woman, laughing at something she said, smiling in a way that I'd never seen for me. My chest tightened. I didn't know who she was, but I didn't need to. I knew immediately that she had something I didn't. I wanted to step forward, to call his name, to shake him, to tell him he had no idea what he was missing. But my legs refused to move. I just stood there, drenched, feeling invisible. And then, just as suddenly as I saw him, he turned. His eyes met mine. Not fully, but enough to make me think he had seen me. And in that moment, my world wavered. Was it recognition? Or just a trick of the storm-soaked streets? I would never know. Not yet. I'd liked him for years, quietly, hopelessly. It wasn't just a crush. It was that feeling you can't explain, the one that sneaks into your thoughts when you're brushing your teeth, when you're stuck in traffic, when you're lying awake at night. I imagined what it would be like to talk to him, to laugh with him, to hold his hand, but life had a way of keeping us apart. I had friends who warned me not to fall too hard. He's probably busy with work, Lina. Don't get hurt. I nodded, smiling politely, but inside, I didn't listen. I couldn't, because even if he never noticed me, just seeing him made everything else seem small. Ethan, though, wasn't oblivious. That day, in the rain, his eyes lingered a second longer than they should have. He didn't smile and he didn't wave. But there was something familiar. Something in the tilt of his head, the slight crease near his eyes when he thought no one was looking. I didn't know it yet, but he had been noticing me too. Quietly, from afar, careful not to cross the invisible line, and that's when the first twist of our story started without either of us knowing it. I stood there, heart hammering, as the rain soaked through my jacket. I felt small, invisible, and yet alive. Because the truth was, even if he never spoke to me, even if he never loved me, he existed in my life, and sometimes that's enough. But life Life has a way of turning enough into never enough. I watched him disappear down the street with her, laughing, unaware that my entire world had just cracked in two. And I whispered to the rain, one day, you'll see me. And when you do, nothing will ever be the same. That was the beginning of silent glances, hidden hearts, and a story neither of us could have predicted. Little did I know that the man who walked away from me in that rain was the same man who would change my life forever, and little did he know I was already falling. I couldn't stop thinking about him. Not for a minute, not even while trying to focus on my work at the CAF. The smell of coffee, the clinking of cups, the laughter of customers, all of it faded into the background because my mind was somewhere else. With him, Ethan, I remember the first time I had spoken to him. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a passing comment about a book he was reading in the library. I had tried to sound casual, confident even, but my voice had betrayed me with that tiny quiver. He had looked up, surprised, and then smiled. Just a small, fleeting smile, but it had been enough to make my knees feel weak. From that day on, I started noticing all the little ways he interacted with the world. The way he tucked his hair behind his ear when concentrating. The way he frowned slightly at loud noises. The way he helped people quietly, never asking for recognition. I thought I was just observing. I thought I was the only one who had noticed. But that wasn't true, because Ethan had his own way of noticing me. He didn't follow me around or make grand gestures. No, he did it in quiet ways, the ones most people would miss. A glance lingering too long, a small nod of acknowledgement, a hand brushing a stray strand of hair behind my ear without anyone realizing. I didn't know it then, but he had been aware of me for far longer than I had thought. I had spent nights imagining what it would be like if he finally spoke to me, really spoke, and not just in passing. Would he like me? Would he laugh at me in a way that made my heart race? Or would he politely smile and move on? I couldn't predict his reaction, and that uncertainty was both terrifying and intoxicating. Then came the day that everything seemed to shift. It was a weekend art fair in the city square. A vibrant chaos of music, laughter, and the smell of fresh paint and baked goods. I had been wandering through the stalls, lost in a daydream about him, when I saw him again. Ethan, alone this time. And just like before, my heart skipped a beat. I debated whether to approach him. I rehearsed lines in my head, casual greetings that might spark a conversation, maybe even a laugh. But as I walked closer, he looked up and our eyes met. That same moment from the rainy street flashed through my mind, only this time it was different. He smiled, not at anyone else, not distracted, but directly at me. My breath caught. He didn't speak, just gave a small, almost shy nod. And in that simple gesture, I felt like he had spoken more than words ever could. I smiled back, a little nervously, and turned to continue browsing the stalls. But I couldn't help stealing glances at him, hoping he would stay there just a little longer. And he did. As the afternoon passed, I found myself bumping into him again and again at different stalls, at times seemingly by coincidence, though I suspected it might not have been. Every time, there was a silent exchange, a shared glance, a brief smile, a flicker of recognition. Each encounter made my chest tighten, filled me with warmth, and yet left me aching because I couldn't reach out. I had started to believe in these moments as something more than luck. Maybe they were signs, little threads connecting our lives, guiding us closer without us even realizing. And yet, fear held me back. Fear of rejection, fear of misunderstanding, fear of the unknown. Then, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the square, I saw him helping a little boy who had dropped his ice cream. Ethan knelt down, speaking softly, making the boy laugh again. I watched, completely captivated. It was in that moment that I realized why I had been drawn to him for so long. It wasn't just his looks, or the quiet intensity in his eyes. It was the way he cared, the way he noticed even the smallest things, the way he made the world around him a little better without asking for anything in return. I wanted to be part of that world, part of that attention, part of the care he gave so freely. And more than anything, I wanted him to notice me not just in fleeting glances or stolen moments, but truly notice me. Little did I know, he was already noticing, already aware, and already caring. But there was something he hadn't told anyone, not even me. Something that had kept him at a distance, careful, cautious, watching. A secret he carried like a shadow behind his eyes. I didn't know it yet, but that secret was about to ripple through our lives in ways I could never have imagined. By the time the fair ended, I walked home with my heart both full and heavy. Full of hope, heavy with uncertainty. The city lights reflected in puddles along the sidewalk, and I imagined them as tiny sparks of possibility. Could he feel it too? Could he see me as more than a stranger, more than someone who admired him from afar? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. My life had shifted. The quiet threads connecting us were pulling tighter, drawing me closer to a story I hadn't dared to dream, yet one that was slowly, inexorably unfolding, and somewhere across the city streets, Ethan was walking home too, thinking of me. Not just thinking, but wondering. Wondering if today, maybe, the distance could shrink. Wondering if perhaps, finally, the silence between us could end. I had no idea then how much our lives would soon collide. How secrets, misunderstandings, and unexpected twists would push us to the brink of heartbreak and hope. But for now, I clung to the little moments, the stolen glances, the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, he felt the same, and that hope, it was enough to keep me dreaming. The days after the art fair passed in a blur. I found myself scanning the crowded streets, hoping for glimpses of him, any sign that our silent connection meant more than coincidence. My friends noticed my absent-minded smiles, the way I'd drift off mid-conversation. He must be something special, one of them teased. I didn't respond. How could I explain that it wasn't just that he was special, it was that he was him? Then came that afternoon, the one that made my chest constrict in ways I hadn't imagined. I was walking past the small bookstore near the corner of my street. The kind with shelves stacked haphazardly and the smell of old paper lingering in the air. It had become my little escape from the city noise. I wasn't expecting to see him there, but there he was. Ethan, and not just Ethan, but her, the woman from the rainy street, the one I had seen him with before, the one whose laugh had haunted my thoughts for days. They were close, laughing at something only they seemed to understand, their heads leaning together just slightly. My stomach dropped. My chest tightened. I felt a hollow ache spread through me, and suddenly, the air in the bookstore seemed heavier, thicker. I wanted to confront him, to run up and demand an explanation, but my feet refused to move. I froze in the doorway, pretending to browse a shelf of dusty novels, while my mind raced. What was she doing with him? Did he like her? Were those smiles for me or for her? And then it happened. He looked up, and our eyes met. But something was off. There was a flicker of surprise in his gaze, a tension I didn't understand. He wasn't smiling like he had before. Not now. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that maybe it was just coincidence. But the way he turned back to her, the ease of their laughter, the way she touched his arm lightly. It felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I turned and fled, my coat flapping around me as the autumn wind hit my face. I walked aimlessly, past the familiar CAFS, the neon signs, the streets where we had once brushed shoulders without realizing it. Everything was sharp, every sound a reminder that he might never be mine. The next few days were the hardest. I avoided our usual spots, even the CAFS where we had accidentally met. I didn't want to see him, didn't want to risk the fragile hope I had nurtured. But avoiding him only made my thoughts louder, swirling with questions I didn't dare ask. Why was he with her? Was I wrong about him noticing me? Had I imagined our little glances, our moments at the fair? My heart screamed that he had felt something too, but my mind kept twisting it into doubt. Then came the text. I had forgotten my phone on the kitchen counter that morning. When I picked it up that evening, a single message blinked on the screen. Hey, I saw you today. Are you okay? My heart skipped. It was him, Ethan. But my pride, my fear, my doubt, they all fought against the desire to reply. I stared at the message for hours, my thumb hovering over the screen. Could I trust it? Or was this just another trick of fate? Another fleeting attention I wasn't supposed to interpret? Finally, against my better judgment, I typed back, I'm fine. Simple, short, neutral, because I didn't know what else to say. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept replaying the scene in the bookstore over and over, the way he laughed with her, the light in her eyes that I thought was meant for me. I imagined every possible scenario, each one worse than the last, and then, as if mocking me, a memory flashed, a brief encounter months ago when Ethan had helped me carry groceries when the rain caught me off guard. At the time, I had felt a surge of hope, thinking that maybe he cared more than anyone else realized. But now, I questioned everything. Was he pretending all this time? Did he ever care at all? Or was I just another face he passed by, someone he noticed only because I was there, watching him, longing for him? The next morning, I avoided the CAF, where we sometimes met by accident. I walked past the city square quickly, head down, trying not to see him anywhere. And yet, fate, or perhaps the universe, was cruel. He was there, alone this time. Waiting, watching. I froze, heart hammering, unsure whether to confront him or flee again. I wanted answers, wanted clarity, wanted reassurance. But all I felt was anger, hurt, and an gnawing sense of betrayal. And then he saw me. That familiar, impossible gaze. But instead of smiling, he looked sad, concerned, confused. Lina, he said softly, his voice catching slightly. I can explain. I wanted to tell him I didn't want explanations. That the moment he spent with her had been enough to break whatever fragile hope I had. But my pride, and the fear of being hurt again, held me silent. I don't want to hear it, I finally whispered, my voice trembling. Just leave me alone. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. The autumn wind rustling his coat, a shadow of sorrow in his eyes. That night, I replayed every interaction we'd ever had, the smiles, the small moments, the way our paths seemed to cross too often to be coincidence. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, that I had no idea who he really was. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to admit it, because the truth was simple and painful. I loved him. And for the first time, I wasn't sure he loved me back. And just like that, the delicate thread connecting us snapped. Or at least, I thought it had. Little did I know, Ethan's intentions were never what they appeared to be. And the secret he had been carrying, the truth he had been protecting not just from me, but from everyone, was about to surface in ways that would change everything I thought I knew about him. And about myself. The days after the bookstore incident were unbearable. I tried to immerse myself in routine work, errands, reading, but no matter what I did, his face lingered at the edges of my mind. I tried to convince myself that what I saw was real, that maybe Ethan didn't mean anything by it. But every rational thought was drowned by the ache in my chest. And then he appeared. It was a late afternoon in the park, the kind of quiet that felt almost sacred. I had gone there hoping for solitude, away from the city noise, away from him, and yet, there he was, sitting on a bench beneath the giant oak tree, looking like he belonged there in a way I could never belong anywhere. "Lina," he called softly, and I froze. My name on his lips sounded like a whisper from another world, a sound that made my heart pound faster than I could manage. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to run, to keep my distance, to protect myself from disappointment. But another part, a desperate part, wanted to hear him, to understand, to finally know the truth. I walked toward him, cautiously, my hands trembling slightly in the cold autumn air. He stood as I approached, his usual calm demeanor flickering with a rare vulnerability I had never seen before. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice low, careful, almost as if he feared breaking the fragile space between us. Something I should have said a long time ago. My heart skipped. Could this be it? Could he finally admit it? Could he finally tell me that all those silent glances, all those fleeting moments had meant something? But before he could continue, a sudden shout from a distance interrupted us, a little girl calling for her lost puppy. Ethan instinctively ran toward the commotion, leaving me standing there, frozen. My emotions tangled in confusion and frustration. I watched him disappear down the path, chasing after the girl and her frantic cries, and felt a mix of admiration and despair. That had always been him, always noticing, always helping, never thinking about himself. And yet, in that moment, I wanted nothing more than to be the one he noticed first. That evening, I wandered the streets alone, replaying our almost conversation over and over in my mind. The words he hadn't said, the emotions he hadn't revealed, they haunted me more than anything else. I tried to imagine what it would feel like to finally hear him say he cared, to finally let go of the doubts that had been gnawing at me since the bookstore. But each scenario ended the same way, him leaving, me heartbroken, the words lost in the space between us. I didn't know it yet, but Ethan had felt the same torment. He had rehearsed the confession 1,000 times in his mind, and each time, it was interrupted by coincidence, by circumstance, by the very world that seemed determined to keep us apart. The next day, I avoided him entirely. My pride demanded distance, my heart demanded clarity, and my mind demanded I protect myself from further hurt. But the universe, as it often does, had other plans. I was walking down the crowded street near the university when I saw him again. This time, he wasn't alone. He was speaking to a colleague, discussing some work project, his usual calm intensity taking over. But when he saw me, even from across the crowd, his eyes softened. That small, familiar look, the one that made me feel seen, was still there. My stomach twisted. I wanted to run. I wanted to approach him. I wanted to demand answers. And yet, I did nothing. I just watched, heart aching, as he continued on his way. Later that evening, I received another text from him. I tried to tell you. I will, when the time is right. Please, don't push me away. My fingers hovered over the screen, and I felt the familiar mix of hope and fear. Could I wait? Could I trust him? My heart screamed yes, but my mind warned me that hope could be dangerous, especially when paired with love that hadn't yet been spoken aloud. I stared out the window at the city lights, wondering if he was thinking of me as I thought of him, wondering if the quiet distance between us would finally close, or if the misunderstanding from the bookstore would remain a wall too high to climb. That night, sleep came reluctantly. I replayed every small gesture, every glance, every almost confession. And I realized that, despite the confusion and the ache, I couldn't stop caring. I couldn't stop hoping. And somewhere in the city, Ethan lay awake too, rehearsing the words he would finally say. Words that could either bring us together or push us further apart. Little did we know that the twists of fate weren't done with us yet. That the secrets, the timing, and the misunderstandings were only the beginning of a story that would test our hearts in ways we could never have imagined. The days that followed felt like a delicate balance between hope and hesitation. I couldn't stop thinking about him, but I had learned to hide it, mask it with casual smiles, polite nods, and pretending the ache in my chest wasn't real. And yet, fate had a way of nudging us together, no matter how much I tried to avoid it. It started with a chance encounter in the library. I had been searching for a book on urban photography when I felt someone standing close behind me. I turned and there he was, Ethan, holding a book I had been eyeing, with that same quiet, almost shy smile that made my heart lurch. Looking for this? He asked, holding the book out. I blinked, stunned. Yes. Thank you. He nodded, a little awkwardly, and I felt the warmth of his presence, the familiar pull of something I couldn't quite name. We ended up walking through the aisles together, our conversation hesitant at first, then gradually flowing. Small things, mundane things, favorite authors, coffee preferences, library habits. Yet every word, every laugh, every glance felt monumental. It was in those quiet moments that I began to notice something I hadn't before: the way he listened, truly listened. Not just to my words, but to the pauses, the inflections, the unspoken emotions between the lines. I started to feel a strange sense of ease around him, as if the world had contracted to just the two of us in that library. Surrounded by stories yet to be told, our encounters became more frequent, almost as if the city itself conspired to bring us together. We crossed paths at the CAF, where he would order the same coffee every morning and give me a small smile from across the counter. We met in the park, helping a stray cat that had wandered into the walkway, laughing at the way it hissed and then purred in the same breath. Each moment, seemingly ordinary, was charged with meaning. One afternoon, I found myself walking beside him after a community volunteer event. We had been helping at a small shelter, painting walls, organizing supplies, and distributing meals. Mud on our shoes, paint on our hands, but smiles on our faces. I looked at him then, really looked, and felt my chest tighten. There was something so honest in the way he cared, not just about me, but about everything around him. Why do you always do this? I asked suddenly, gesturing to the organized chaos around us. He shrugged lightly. I don't know. Feels right, I guess. Making life a little easier for someone it matters. I smiled, feeling something stir deep inside me. There was kindness in him I hadn't noticed before, and yet, there was something else, something quiet, hesitant, almost guarded. He wasn't just gentle. He was careful. And I sensed, without knowing how, that there was a part of him he didn't reveal to anyone. Over time, the moments between us began to speak louder than words. A hand brushing mine as we reached for the same book, lingering just a second too long. Shared laughter over clumsy mistakes at the volunteer site. Small gestures bringing me coffee just the way I liked it, waiting for me when I paused to tie my shoes, sending a brief message to check if I had made it home safely. Each gesture left me both elated and nervous. I wanted to ask, to push further, to understand what all of this meant. And yet, I didn't. Because part of me feared the answer. Part of me feared that the walls he had built around himself were impenetrable. That the moments we shared, as intimate as they felt, could never evolve into what I secretly wanted more. One evening, we found ourselves walking along the river, the city lights dancing on the water's surface. I noticed how quiet he was, his usual calm gaze fixed on the reflections in the water. "Ethan?" I asked softly. He turned to me, eyes reflecting both curiosity and something heavier, something I couldn't name. "Yeah?" I hesitated, my words caught between the longing in my chest and the fear of what I might hear. "Can I ask you something personal?" He nodded slowly. "Of course." I swallowed hard. "Why are you always so careful? With me, with everyone? You notice things. You care. But you never say it. Why?" He paused, his gaze drifting to the rippling river. "It's complicated," he admitted quietly. "There are things I've kept to myself. Things I don't tell anyone, not because I don't want to, but because I have to." The pause between us was thick, filled with unspoken emotion. My heart ached with curiosity, with worry, with hope. I wanted to know, to understand, to break through whatever barrier existed between us. "I understand," I whispered, though I didn't. Not really. But I wanted him to know that I was willing to wait, willing to be patient. He looked at me then, a faint, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Thank you, Lina. That means more than you know." And in that moment, as we walked side by side under the fading light of the evening, I realized something important. Love wasn't always about grand declarations or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it was in the quiet moments, in the shared laughter, in the subtle gestures that bound two people together before they even realized it. But even as our bond grew, the secret he carried, the one he had hinted at but never revealed, loomed like a shadow. I could feel it in the way his eyes sometimes darkened when he thought I wasn't looking, in the way he hesitated before answering certain questions, in the subtle tension that threaded through his otherwise calm demeanor. I didn't know what it was, and part of me feared that knowing would change everything. And yet, despite that fear, I couldn't stop myself from hoping that whatever it was, it wouldn't tear us apart, that it would only make the connection we shared stronger, more resilient and breakable. Little did I know, the tests of our hearts were only beginning, and the twists ahead would challenge everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and destiny. The days that followed were filled with quiet moments, each one a delicate balance of joy and unease. Ethan and I had begun to share more time together, long walks, coffee breaks, casual conversations that seemed insignificant to anyone else, but meant everything to me. I had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we were moving closer, building a bridge across the distance that had kept our hearts apart for so long. But the shadow lingered. I had noticed it first in small ways. The way his gaze flickered towards something or someone when I wasn't looking. The hesitation in his voice when I asked about his past. The subtle tension that threaded through his otherwise calm demeanor. I wanted to ask, to push, to understand. But a part of me feared the answer. And then it happened. It was a Thursday evening. We were volunteering again at the shelter, painting murals on the walls to brighten the place up for the children. I had been handing Ethan brushes and paint buckets when I noticed him pause, staring at a particular corner of the room. His expression was unreadable, tense, distant, and something else I couldn't identify. "Ethan?" I asked softly, brushing paint off my hands. He blinked, as if startled out of a memory he didn't want to revisit. Just thinking," he muttered, his voice tight. I frowned. "About what?" He shook his head quickly, forcing a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing. Just work stuff." But I knew better. I had learned to read him in the past few weeks. His silence was heavy with meaning, a warning bell I couldn't ignore. Later, we walked along the quiet streets after volunteering, the city lights shimmering in the puddles from the earlier rain. I tried to broach the subject again, unable to let it go. "Ethan, you can tell me you know. Whatever it is," I said gently, my voice carrying the weight of my concern. "I won't judge. I just want to understand you." He stopped walking, turning to face me. The expression on his face was a mixture of fear and determination, as if he had been wrestling with a decision for days. He looked away, then back at me, his eyes dark and conflicted. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice low, cautious. "Something I've kept hidden, and it's not easy." My heart skipped a beat. Finally, he was going to tell me. "I should have told you earlier," he continued, "but I didn't want to burden you. I didn't want to risk losing what we have." Even before it could really begin, I took a step closer, holding my breath. "Ethan, whatever it is, it can't make me stop caring. I trust you." He hesitated, then exhaled sharply, like releasing a weight he had carried for far too long. "There's someone from my past. Someone who complicates things. They believe we're involved in something we're not. And if they find out, it could ruin everything, not just for me, but for the people I care about. Including you." The words hit me like a storm. My chest tightened, my stomach dropped. I wanted to ask questions, to demand explanations, but I sensed that pressing him now would only push him further into his shell. I understand," I whispered, though the truth was, I didn't. Not fully. I wanted to ask for details, to unravel the mystery, but I didn't. I just nodded, placing a hand lightly on his arm in a gesture of comfort and trust. The tension between us shifted subtly after that. He remained close, attentive, protective, yet there was an unspoken barrier now, a distance I could feel even when he was near. I wanted to tear down that wall, to understand him fully. But I also understood that some secrets required time to reveal. Despite the unease, we shared small, intimate moments sitting on park benches as the sun set, sharing stories from our childhoods, laughing at each other's clumsy attempts to cook meals at the shelter. Every touch, every glance, every shared smile reminded me why I had fallen for him, why my heart still ached with hope and desire, and yet the secret loomed. I could feel it in the way he flinched when someone mentioned certain names, in the way his eyes darkened when he thought no one was watching, in the rare moments when his calm demeanor cracked. I wanted to demand answers, to unravel the truth. But I knew that forcing it could break the fragile connection we had built. As I waited, holding on to the hope that he would trust me enough to reveal everything when the time was right. And deep down, I feared that the revelation might change everything, that it might shatter the delicate thread connecting us. The turning point came unexpectedly. One evening, as we walked past the quiet city streets, a figure appeared, someone from his past, someone who recognized him immediately. Their eyes locked, and I felt the air thicken with tension. I could see the conflict in Ethan's gaze, the silent battle between fear and resolve. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he took a deep breath, his jaw tightening. "Lina, I think it's time you knew the truth," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced. I felt a mixture of fear, curiosity, and anticipation. Whatever this secret was, it was about to change everything. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Love isn't just about shared laughter and quiet moments. Sometimes it's about facing the shadows together, confronting fears, and trusting each other even when the truth is difficult to bear. Little did I know, the revelation about to unfold would test everything I thought I knew about him, and everything I believed about myself. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. The revelation Ethan had hinted at lingered in my mind, heavy and unrelenting. I replayed that moment over and over. The figure from his past, the way his eyes darkened, the tension in his voice when he said, "It's time you knew the truth." I didn't know what the truth was yet, but I could feel it gnawing at the fragile trust we had built. And though I tried to convince myself otherwise, I began to retreat, pulling back from the quiet moments, the lingering glances, the shared laughter that had once felt so effortless. When he called or texted, I kept my replies short, careful, distant. I wasn't ready to confront whatever lay ahead. My heart ached with longing, but it also burned with fear. I couldn't let myself be vulnerable, not yet, Ethan noticed. I could see it in his eyes when we crossed paths at the CAF or the park. His usual calm gaze carried worry, his subtle gestures tinged with hesitation. He tried to reach out to bridge the distance, but every attempt was met with polite avoidance. One evening, I found myself sitting on a park bench, staring at the river as the city lights shimmered on its surface. The wind tugged at my hair, and I felt a hollow ache in my chest. I didn't want to push him away, but I couldn't face the unknown. I thought of our moments together, the quiet laughter, the shared coffee, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me, and I felt a pang of regret. I wanted him to know that I still cared, that I still hoped. But I also knew that facing the truth too soon could unravel everything. And then he appeared, Ethan, walking slowly along the path, eyes scanning the benches until they found me. He hesitated, then approached, hands stuffed into the pockets of his coat. "Lina," he said softly, stopping a few feet away. "Can we talk?" I shook my head, unable to meet his gaze. I don't think it's a good idea right now," he sighed, a sound heavy with frustration and sadness. "I understand, but I can't ignore it. I can't ignore you." "I know," I whispered, my voice barely audible. I need time. I don't even know what I'm afraid of, but I need space." Ethan nodded slowly, his expression conflicted. He didn't push, didn't argue. Instead, he lingered for a moment, then turned and walked away, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts. The next days were torturous. I tried to focus on work, on friends, on everything else that might distract me from the ache in my heart. But every street, every park, Every CAF reminded me of him. Every fleeting memory, the way he laughed at my clumsy jokes. The way he noticed the small things I didn't expect anyone to see, pulled me back into the orbit of a man I was terrified of losing. And then came the rumors, whispers that reached me through mutual friends. Snippets of conversations about his past, about complicated relationships, about choices he had made long before I met him. My mind twisted them, assumed the worst, and suddenly the bridge we had built felt fragile, ready to crumble. I wanted to confront him, to demand the truth, but fear held me back. What if the truth was worse than I imagined? What if the man I had grown to trust and care for had a past that made him incompatible with the life I wanted? So I retreated further, burying my emotions beneath layers of careful distance. I avoided his texts, declined invitations, and tried to convince myself that stepping back was the right choice. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. One evening, I sat by my window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. My phone buzzed a message from him. I stared at it, frozen. "I don't want to lose you. Please, talk to me." My chest tightened. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to tell him that I still cared, that my fear didn't erase my feelings. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I understood the truth. I typed nothing. I stared at the blinking cursor, my heart heavy, my mind full of questions. Because love wasn't supposed to be this hard. Love wasn't supposed to test you with secrets and misunderstandings and fear. And yet, here I was, caught between hope and hesitation, longing and doubt, and a secret that neither of us had fully revealed. Little did I know the distance I created, the walls I built around my heart, were about to collide with the truth Ethan had been hiding. A truth that would force us both to confront our fears, our desires, and the undeniable bond that connected us even through silence, distance, and uncertainty. I hadn't expected to hear from him. After days of avoiding his calls and texts, I was curled up on my sofa, wrapped in a blanket, scrolling aimlessly through my phone when a notification lit up the screen. "Can we meet?" I need to explain everything. It was from Ethan. My heart skipped, my chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to continue keeping my distance, to protect myself from whatever revelation awaited. But another part, an insistent, desperate part, knew I had to face him, to finally understand. We met at the same quiet park where our conversations had first begun to feel like something more than chance. The autumn wind swept leaves across the path as I approached, and there he was, sitting on the bench with that familiar, conflicted gaze. He stood as I neared, hesitating for a brief moment, then nodded toward the empty space beside him. I sat down, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The silence stretched, heavy with anticipation. "Lina," he began, his voice low, careful. "I promised I'd tell you the truth. And I will. But I need you to understand something first. What I'm about to say, it doesn't change how I feel about you." I held my breath. The tension was almost unbearable. "Okay," I whispered. "I'm listening." He exhaled slowly, as if bracing himself. "A few years ago, I was involved in a situation that wasn't simple. It was complicated, and it affected people around me in ways I couldn't control. Someone from that time believes we're connected in a way we're not. And because of that, they've been trying to interfere in my life, to manipulate things behind the scenes." I frowned, confused. "What do you mean? Interfere how?" He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. It's hard to explain. There were mistakes, misunderstandings, things that were never meant to hurt anyone. But they did. And now this person. They think I owe them loyalty, or that I'm responsible for something I'm not. That's why I've been so careful, why I kept my distance sometimes. I didn't want them, or anyone else, to hurt you because of my past. My heart pounded. I felt a mixture of relief, confusion and fear. Relief that it wasn't about someone else romantically. Confusion at the complexity of his past. And fear because I realized how dangerous secrecy could be, even when intentions were pure. Lina, he continued, his eyes searching mine. I never wanted to hide this from you. I wanted to protect you. And I wanted to wait until I knew it was safe to tell you. Because the last thing I'd ever do is put you in harm's way. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. The weight of everything, the misunderstandings, the distance, the fear suddenly made sense. His caution wasn't rejection. It was protection. His silence wasn't indifference. It was care. I didn't realize. I whispered, my voice trembling. I thought maybe you didn't care about me the way I care about you. He reached for my hand gently, his touch warm and reassuring. I do, Lina. More than I can explain. More than I can ever risk saying without fear. But now, I can't hide it anymore. Not from you. Not ever. The moment hung between us, electric with emotion. I could feel my heart beating, loud and erratic, as I looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity, the vulnerability, the depth of what he was feeling. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, the fear that had kept me distant melted away. I trust you, I said finally, my voice soft but firm. I don't know all the details yet, but I trust you. His smile was small, almost shy, but it lit up his face. Thank you, he whispered. That means everything to me. And in that moment, as the autumn wind danced around us and the city lights glimmered like distant stars, I realized something profound. Secrets could hurt. Misunderstandings could divide and fear could push us apart. But love, true love, had a way of bridging the gap, of healing the distance, and of bringing hearts together even when the path seemed uncertain. Little did we know, this revelation was only the beginning. There were more truths, deeper complications, and unexpected twists ahead, things that would test our trust, our patience, and the very bond that was beginning to form between us. But for now, for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. A fragile, beautiful hope that maybe, just maybe, we could face everything together. The days after our conversation felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter, because I finally understood the reason behind his careful distance, his hesitation, and the walls he had built around himself. He hadn't been rejecting me, he had been protecting me. And heavier, because I knew that the full weight of his past was still out there, lurking, waiting to collide with our fragile happiness. We tried to continue our routines, sharing coffee and small conversations, helping at the shelter and walking in the park. But the tension was palpable now. Every glance, every whispered call from someone in the city, every message that hinted at trouble reminded us both that his secret wasn't just a memory, it was a force that could disrupt everything. One evening, I was leaving the CAF after a late shift when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number blinked on the screen. Stop interfering. He's not yours to claim. My stomach churned. My fingers trembled as I read the words over and over. The threat was clear, and the timing impossible to ignore. I felt my chest tighten as I realized that Ethan's past wasn't just a shadow, it was an active storm. Before I could process it, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, heart pounding, and saw Ethan running toward me, eyes wide with concern. "Lina, are you okay?" he asked, grabbing my hands gently. I showed him the message. His face darkened instantly, and a quiet anger replaced his usual calm demeanor. "They found out," he muttered. I knew it was only a matter of time, but I didn't think it would reach you. I felt fear and frustration swell inside me. "What do you mean? Who are they? What do they want?" He took a deep breath, his hand brushing mine reassuringly. "It's complicated, Lina. Someone from my past, someone I used to work with, believes that I owe them. They're trying to control parts of my life. And now, by extension, yours. I never wanted you to get caught up in this, but it seems they're not going to let us be." The revelation hit me harder than I expected. My mind raced, imagining threats, lies, and interference in our lives. And yet, despite the fear, I could see the determination in his eyes. The unwavering focus to protect me no matter the cost. That night, we stayed at my apartment, huddled on the couch with the city lights twinkling beyond the window. Ethan explained everything he could, his past involvements, the misunderstandings, the manipulations that had occurred years before. The story was long, complex, and riddled with consequences. But each detail made me understand him better, appreciate his patience, and see the depth of his courage. "I didn't want to bring this into your life," he admitted softly, his hand clasping mine tightly. "But now, you're part of it whether we like it or not. And I need you to trust me, to stay with me as we face this together." I felt a surge of emotion, fear, yes, but also love, admiration, and a fierce determination. "I trust you," I whispered. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The next days were a whirlwind. Threatening messages, mysterious phone calls, and subtle manipulations from his past tested our bond relentlessly. I found myself relying on him not just for emotional support, but for guidance and protection. And he relied on me too, not just for trust, but for strength, for the courage to stay despite the storm surrounding us. During one particularly tense evening, we confronted the source, a figure from his past who had misunderstood loyalties and intentions. It was intense, emotional, and for a moment, I feared that everything we had built would collapse under the weight of anger, betrayal, and fear. But in the middle of the confrontation, I saw Ethan's true self, not the guarded man who had hidden his secrets, but the courageous, loyal, and compassionate person who had quietly captured my heart from the very beginning. And in that moment, standing beside him, I realized something powerful. Love wasn't just about peaceful days and quiet laughter. Love was about facing storms, standing firm in the face of fear, and trusting the bond between hearts, even when the world seemed intent on tearing it apart. By the end of that week, the tension began to ease. The threats subsided, the manipulations faltered, and a fragile peace returned. We had faced the first storm together, stronger than before. But beneath the relief lingered the knowledge that more challenges awaited, more truths, more twists, more tests of our hearts. And yet, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I didn't feel fear alone. I felt hope. Hope that we could face whatever came, side by side. Hope that the bond we had fought to protect could endure. Hope that the story between us, complicated, messy, imperfect, was just beginning to unfold. Because love, I realized, wasn't about perfection. It was about courage, trust, and the willingness to stand together when everything else threatened to pull you apart. The days following the confrontation with Ethan's past felt surreal. The tension that had shadowed every interaction between us began to lift, replaced with something fragile but undeniable: clarity. I realized that the moments of fear, doubt, and misunderstanding had been necessary, shaping the trust between us into something resilient and unbreakable. Ethan and I met in the park one crisp morning, the air tinged with the promise of change. The leaves had turned gold and crimson, swirling around our feet as we walked side by side, silently. There was no need for words. The quiet between us spoke volumes. Finally, he stopped and turned to face me, his eyes searching mine with a mixture of hope and vulnerability. "Lina, I need you to know something. Through all of this, I've realized something I can't ignore. I don't just care about you, I love you. I have from the beginning, even when I didn't know how to say it, even when I thought I had to keep you safe by keeping distance." My chest tightened, tears threatening to spill. I had waited for this moment longer than I cared to admit. My hands trembled as I reached for his. "Ethan, I love you too. I've loved you through every doubt, every silence, every almost confession. I just needed to understand, to trust that we could face everything together." His lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "We can. Whatever comes, we face it together." And with that, the world seemed to realign. The weight of secrets, the shadows of misunderstandings, the chaos of fear, all of it melted away in the warmth of that moment. I realized then that love wasn't just a feeling. It was a choice, a commitment, a willingness to stand together when life's storms threatened to tear you apart. The next weeks were filled with the kind of happiness that feels both exhilarating and grounding. Ethan and I spent long afternoons at the CAF, laughing over clumsy coffee-making attempts. We wandered the city streets, hand in hand, sharing stories, secrets, and dreams for the future. The shadow of his past no longer haunted us. It existed only as a reminder of what we had endured and overcome. And then came the twist I never saw coming. One afternoon, as we helped at the shelter, a place that had become a symbol of our journey, we discovered a letter slipped under the door. The handwriting was familiar, the figure from Ethan's past. I braced myself, expecting another threat, another manipulation, but the letter was different. "I see now what I couldn't before. You two, you belong together. I've been wrong, and I hope you find the happiness I tried to deny you. Forgive me." I looked at Ethan, eyes wide, and he laughed softly, shaking his head. "I didn't expect that," he admitted, relief washing over his features. I smiled, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. The past had been faced, the obstacles overcome, and our love had endured. That evening, we returned to the park where our story had unfolded, where moments of hesitation, understanding, and trust had shaped our hearts. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ethan took my hand in his. "Lina," he said softly, "no more secrets, no more walls. Just us." I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks, a smile spreading across my face. "Just us," I echoed, and in that moment, I realized that the story we had fought to write, the one filled with misunderstandings, secrets, and trials, was far from over. But now we could write it together, side by side, hearts entwined, ready for whatever the future held, because love, true love, wasn't about perfection. It was about resilience, courage, trust, and the willingness to face everything together, no matter how complicated, how messy, or how uncertain the path might be. And as Ethan leaned in, and I met him halfway, I knew without a doubt that we were ready. The city lights flickered around us. The world bustling, oblivious, yet perfectly in tune with the story we had fought to create. And for the first time, I felt whole. Love had won. All right, everyone, that's all I have for today. If you found this entertaining, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. Don't forget to comment your thoughts regarding this story. If you want to watch more, please check out our playlist. Finally, a huge thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.